Oh, what do we have here? Today we got El Mencho is dead, leader of the CJNG, timeline of the operation in TAPALPA, Jalisco. Thank you guys for tuning in, and without further ado, let's get it! This is yesterday, 7:25 a.m. Y'all hear that gunshot? Gunshots? That's a whole war. They not doing this with no helmet or vests. I couldn't do it. This is crazy.
On Sunday morning, February 22, 2026, the killing of Nemesio Rubino Segarra Cervantes, alias El Mencho, the top leader of the Jalisco Nueva Generación Cartel, was announced. El Mencho, 59, was a co-founder of the CJ, an organization that managed to expand across much of the country in a decade, establishing itself as one of the criminal structures with the greatest operational and violent capacity. The United States government offered up to $15 billion for information leading to his capture, while in Mexico he was listed as one of the priority targets, basically the Mexican Osama bin Laden.
What?
What began as a chain of rumors accompanied by outbreaks of violence in different parts of the country ended up escalating to become one of the most significant events for Mexican national security in the last decade. According to preliminary information, the operation combined high-level strategic intelligence, interagency coordination, intelligence provided by the United States, and precise tactical execution. This operation involved elements of the Mexican Army and National Guard Special Forces, the Attorney General's Office, the Mexican National Intelligence Center, and military intelligence areas. The question now is inevitable. How is this mega operation really planned? What role did the intelligence shared by the United States play? And above all, what does the death of the Lord of the Roosters imply for the future of the war on drugs? Who will be his successor? And how will the criminal map in Mexico be reconfigured? Well, you're about to find out all that.
This finna be a war, baby.
Speaking. Welcome to Armapedia. You see, the first signs of the operation began a day earlier. On February 21, 2026, residents of the exclusive TAPALPA Country Club complex in Jalisco reported an unusual
Looks
overflight.
like such a
Two
beautiful
military
neighborhood,
helicopters
too.
circled the area a couple of times and then left. Nothing scandalous at first glance, but in TAPALPA, Jalisco, and even less so in that residential area, these types of military movements are not normal. TAPALPA is a magical town and a relaxing tourist destination known for its wooded landscapes and isolated cabins in the Sierra Madre del Sur. Although it is well known that some areas are a stronghold of the CJ.
That's one place I would not be going to TAPALPA. That's where, hell no.
CJNG. That was the first indication. However, on the morning of Sunday, February, Sierra Madre del Sur, although it is well known that some areas are a stronghold of the CJNG. That was the first indication. However, on the morning of Sunday, February 22nd, around 7 a.m., when I barely woke up among the forests of the mountains, the scene changed radically. Witnesses reported sighting 4 military helicopters, possibly UH-60 Black Hawks armed with M134 miniguns, accompanied by 2 T-6 Texan II aircraft of the Mexican Air Force. At 7:20 a.m., closer maneuvers began over the Concrete Club subdivisions and the El Pinto Ranch, located about 7 kilometers from the center of TAPALPA, Jalisco, near the Nugal Dam. Minutes later, the first bursts of gunfire were heard. Helicopter gunships, according to multiple testimonies, were firing on the ground as federal forces advanced along rural roads leading to the El Pinto Ranch. The confrontation reportedly lasted approximately 2 hours. You see, for years, El Mencho built a complex network of protection, safe houses, surveillance rings, alternate routes, and shelters distributed throughout Jalisco, Colima, Nayarit, Guanajuato, and Michoacán. His constant mobility was his main shield. For years, this operational discipline fueled the perception that his capture was practically impossible, very similar to what we thought about Mayo Zambada. Now, although official information is limited and many details probably won't be revealed soon, everything points to the fact that the central events occurred at the El Pinto Ranch, located just 2 kilometers from the Tapalpa Country Club complex. It is not known for sure what El Mencho was doing on or near that ranch. It could have been a rest period in the Sierra Madre del Sur forest, perhaps a strategic meeting, we don't know. What is consistent with his history is that he traveled with his closest security circle, basically his Praetorian Guard, as in practically all his trips. What they apparently failed to detect was that the movement was already underway. According to the official statement from the Ministry of National Defense, Special Forces of the Mexican Army, possibly from the Joint Special Force FEC or the Special Forces of the Paratrooper Rifle Brigade and supported by the Immediate Reaction Special Force of the National Guard, FERI, executed an operation based on months of strategic intelligence with the collaboration of the National Intelligence Center and the Special Prosecutor's Office for Organized Crime, FEMDO, to whom the United States had in turn given extremely important intelligence packages for this operation. And well, whether with the approval of President Claudia Sheinbaum, Secretary of Security Omar Garcia Harfuch, Secretary of National Defense Ricardo Trevilla Trejo, or all three, someone at the top of the security apparatus gave the green light. During the fierce exchange of fire, 4 members of the CJNG were killed on the spot and 3 others were seriously injured. All of them were allegedly members of Mencho's closest security ring. On some closed channels, alleged names of high-level members of the CJNG have begun to circulate. Among the aliases mentioned are El Sapo, El Alacran, El Rebelo, El R1, who according to this is the son of Uncle R3, El J1, El Fresa, El Tigra, El Caparo, and Comandante Pay. It is important to emphasize that all of these names and aliases come from unofficial sources and their participation in death while trying to protect El Mencho have not been confirmed by Mexican or U.S. authorities. Continuing on, among the 3 seriously injured members of the CJNG was Nemesio Rubino Seguera Cervantes himself, alias El Mencho, or Lord of the Roosters, as well as one of his most important lieutenants, Gonzalo Mendoza Gaitan, alias El Sapo, identified as one of the most violent and strategic operators within the cartel. During this operation, homemade armored vehicles known as monsters, or narco-tanks, rocket launchers with anti-armor capability and the potential to threaten low-altitude aircraft, and high-caliber assault rifles and light machine guns were seized. As I mentioned, at the time of recording this video, the information is still very limited, but it is already enough to reconstruct a preliminary picture of what happened. Now, as the hours passed, at approximately 9:34 a.m. in Jalisco, Governor Pablo Lemus Navarro confirmed what many already suspected. A high-impact operation was taking place in the municipality of Tapalpa, Jalisco. The death of El Mencho triggered an immediate reaction by the CJNG. Since the early hours of the day, there were roadblocks, vehicle fires, and attacks on stores and establishments in different areas of Jalisco. In several cities, public transportation services were suspended as a preventive measure, while authorities urged the population to remain in their homes for security reasons. But as the hours passed, the blockades spread to neighboring states. Guanajuato, Michoacán, Nayarit, and Aguascalientes reported similar incidents, and later events began to be recorded in Tamaulipas and other states in the country hundreds of kilometers from the initial epicenter. The geographic expansion suggests a coordinated reaction more aimed at generating pressure and chaos than controlling specific territory. Given the magnitude of the criminal response, the Jalisco authorities activated Code Red, the highest level of alert in Jalisco. And well, this tactic of the Mexican cartels that the CJNG used is known in the security field as urban distraction terrorism. This does not seek to conquer territory, but rather to saturate the state's response capacity, forcing it to disperse forces to deal with fires, protect civilians, and restore order. But the real objective is to diffuse the pressure on the critical point of the operation. Seriously, this is probably one of the largest episodes of narco blockades and federal deployment to secure roads in recent Mexican history. In the Vigio, the mobilization was impressive with buoys, checkpoints, air presence, and simultaneous operations in multiple municipalities. Those who were there know exactly what I mean. However, it was not until 11:10 in the morning that an official defense statement confirmed that Nemesio Rubino Seguera Cervantes had died. This official statement clearly stated that the cartel leader did not die immediately at the point of contact. According to the information, he was seriously wounded during the confrontation and later evacuated by air, presumably in a helicopter or military aircraft bound for Mexico City, where he would receive specialized care, but he died during the air transfer. And it is essential to repeat this. According to the official version, El Mencho was captured alive, but seriously wounded during the operation, but later succumbed to the injuries he suffered. From an operational and legal point of view, this is a capture followed by death due to injuries in combat, not an execution or instant death on the spot. Because just imagine this scene. El Mencho, seriously wounded.
Did it really happen like that?
Along with two of his bodyguards, including El Sapo, is immediately evacuated in a military aircraft bound for Mexico City. The protocol was clear. Urgent air extraction and in midair, slowly bleeding to death, the most powerful man in organized crime in Mexico dies. Not in a cell, not in a courtroom, but between the mountains and the sky after an armed confrontation with special forces that ultimately ended his life. Unlike previous operations that ended in tactical retreats or in episodes such as the so-called Culiacanazos in Sinaloa, on this occasion the governments of Mexico and Jalisco maintained the offensive until achieving the priority objective. Following the official statement from the Secretariat of National Defense, President Claudia Sheinbaum publicly congratulated the Mexican Army and the National Guard, validating the results of the deployment and sending a clear political message of institutional support. For his part, the Secretary of Security and Citizen Protection, Omar Garcia Harfuch, highlighted the participation of the Mexican Air Force and the Army, underscoring the interinstitutional coordination and confirming the veracity of the reported events. The cost to the state was also real. 3 Special Forces members were injured during the confrontation with Mencho's security ring and unfortunately lost their lives. However, with information updated as of February 22, 2026, the national count reports 21 members of the National Guard who died in the line of duty, in addition to 18 members of the Mexican Army and 3 officers, and 13 members injured in different parts of the country. From Armapedia we send our condolences to the families of the fallen Mexican soldiers. Now, the body of Nemesio Seguera Cervantes, as well as that of the Toad, would have arrived in Mexico City around 4:30 p.m. under strict security protocols. Upon arrival, the body of Mencho was received by specialized forensic personnel and transferred in a forensic unit to facilities under federal protection. Those who do not live in Mexico City can hardly gauge the magnitude of the police and military deployment that took place in the capital. The operational destination was the Special Prosecutor's Office for Organized Crime FEMDO, where the corresponding legal procedures were activated in high-profile cases. In these types of situations, visual recognition is not enough. Complete expert reports are conducted that include a legal autopsy, biometric identification tests, fingerprint analysis, genetic DNA comparison, forensic dental examination, and detailed photographic documentation to integrate the investigation file. These protocols not only confirm the identity of the target, but also determine the exact cause of death and preserve the chain of custody, a critical element when it comes to taking down a high-value drug lord. But here's a detail that says a lot, in a few words. You see, the statement from the Mexican National Defense Secretariat is particularly revealing when it mentions bilateral coordination and cooperation with the United States. That phrase is not decorative. In operational terms, it suggests a much deeper technological and intelligence component than what is perceived at first glance. Because you see, in these types of high-value operations, signals intelligence, SIGINT, metadata analysis, intelligence fusion, and the use of American ISR, intelligence, balance, and reconnaissance platforms are usually decisive. Tracking satellite communications, electronic patterns, digital signatures, and logistical movements, an area where U.S. agencies maintain a considerable technological advantage, could have been key to locating the exact hideout in the wooded area of TAPALPA, Jalisco.
So the U.S. had a plan this, they gave off the intelligence?
Several international media outlets, such as Reuters, reported that there was support from the Joint Interagency Task Force Against Cartels, JTFCC, a structure under the command of the United States Northern Command specifically designed to map, dismantle, and strike transnational criminal networks that impact U.S. security. However, this task force, made up of multiple U.S. government agencies, has as its main objective to consolidate interagency, military, law enforcement, and intelligence community intelligence to build detailed target packages on criminal leaders and their logistical networks on both sides of the border. A former U.S. official, speaking on condition of anonymity, stated that a detailed dossier had been built on the man. However, both U.S. officials and Mexican government sources emphasized that the raid was an operation designed and executed by Mexico by Mexican soldiers without the physical involvement of U.S. military personnel on the ground. And yes, I understand, there may be doubts about that, but the truth is we will never know. It was not until 7:54 p.m. that Karen Levitt, a spokeswoman for the Donald Trump administration, issued a statement through X mode that the United States did provide intelligence information to the Mexican government to contribute to the success of the operation that culminated in the killing of El Mencho. However, the U.S. spokeswoman did not offer additional details about which specific agency or force was involved in generating intelligence, nor did she clarify whether there was any additional level of U.S. involvement beyond the sharing of information and intelligence. El Mencho's death does not represent just a symbolic achievement for the Mexican government and the United States. It constitutes a direct blow to the center of gravity of a criminal organization that has historically operated under a highly centralized command structure. Because, you see, unlike the Sinaloa cartel, which today functions more like a federation of factions in a civil war, the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel consolidated itself for years around a disciplined vertical leadership with operational control concentrated in the figure of El Mencho, almost like a dictator, and other high-ranking officers he trusted. This model allowed the CJNG to expand rapidly, impose internal cohesion, and project territorial power for more than a decade. However, it also entails a risk. When the leader falls, the vacuum can become a breaking point that leads to more violence. For this reason, many analysts have focused on four key figures who, due to their hierarchy, territorial control, and closeness to the late Mencho, are emerging as the possible heirs to the criminal empire. Number 1. Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, the O3. You see, the O3 is considered by some analysts to be the natural candidate. He is identified as the stepson of El Mencho, which would grant him symbolic legitimacy within the internal structure of the cartel, especially after the capture and extradition of Rubino Gonzalez, El Menchito, the biological son of the leader and who for years was seen as the direct heir. But in addition to the family factor, his operational weight is very relevant. LO3 is linked to the leadership of the so-called elite group, one of the most aggressive cells of the CJNG. However, the leadership would not be without tensions. The leaders of the plaza with greater seniority, territorial autonomy and financial control could question his authority, especially if they perceive that his legitimacy rests more on the last name than on operational consensus. Number 2. Audias Flores Silva, the gardener. He is perhaps the strategist with the greatest operational power within the CJNG. His most trusted men call themselves the Gardener's people. The Gardener controls the production and trafficking of synthetic drugs in the Pacific Zone and is in charge of security in the stronghold of Nayarit, as well as other areas in Michoacan and Jalisco. The Gardener
How do they be finding this type of shit, bro?
is considered a businessman with iron military discipline, which makes him a candidate capable of maintaining the financial and logistical structure of the CJNG. Number 3. Heraclio Guerrero Martinez. This uncle represents the cartel's connection with the self-defense networks and local groups in Michoacan, as well as the CJNG's fuel theft networks. His importance lies in his knowledge of the terrain and his strategic alliances for the control of chemical precursors in the ports of Lázaro Cárdenas and Manzanillo. Although he is a high-ranking figure, his profile is more of a regional operator than a global leader of the organization. In addition, it should be noted that one of his sons, known as R1, died in the operation against El Mencho. Number 4. Ricardo Ruiz Velasco R. This is the operational commander with the greatest media exposure, famous for the propaganda videos where he shows the cartel's firepower, as well as ordering the assassination of a Mexican influencer. He is one of the chiefs of the Guadalajara metropolitan area and is responsible for the armed response to federal operations. His loyalty to the Mencho family has been total, but his impulsive, noisy, and violent style could be an obstacle if the organization seeks a stage of less confrontation with the Mexican state. So the fall of Mencho undoubtedly represents the most relevant turning point in the security strategy of the administration headed by Claudia S.H. Baum and Secretary Omar Garcia Harfuch. However, historical experience is very clear. Drug trafficking in Mexico operates like a hydra. The elimination of a head does not guarantee the disappearance of the body. The real challenge was not only to win the battle in the mountains of Jalisco, but to maintain territorial control, prevent violent fragmentation and prevent the power vacuum from triggering new regional wars. The Lord of the Roosters has fallen, but the structure he built remains. Financial networks, armed cells, logistics routes and middle managers that now face a stage of redefinition. The coming weeks and months will be decisive in determining whether this blow marks the beginning of the structural weakening of the CJ or if we are facing a more aggressive and decentralized reconfiguration. This video is dedicated to the men of the Mexican Army Special Forces and the National Guard who lost their lives during the operation in Jalisco. Their sacrifice in the line of duty will not be forgotten. We honor their bravery, their discipline, and their dedication to the country. Honor and glory to those who fell. Our most sincere solidarity and prompt resignation to their families.
Amen.
First, we would like to take this opportunity to express our condolences to the families of our comrades who also lost their lives. Let's go. And acknowledge our military personnel who carried out a successful operation. It can be seen from many perspectives, but it is definitive. They fulfilled their mission and what was demonstrated. The strength of the Mexican state, there is no doubt about that. Thank you.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Shout out to all my supporters. I love you. If you guys got anything going in Mexico, family, people on both sides, I'm praying for you guys. It's gonna be a rough couple of months in the coming months ahead. This is not gonna blow over easily, so my prayers are out to everybody that lost their lives on both sides, and hopefully peace spreads through Mexico very fast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Without further ado, we out.